Most people no longer feel enough anymore. Not smart enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough. And modern life keeps reinforcing that feeling constantly. Every scroll becomes comparison. Every notification becomes pressure. Every platform quietly reminds people that someone else is doing better somehow. More successful, more admired, more important. And after enough time, the human brain begins treating ordinary existence like failure. That's why so many people feel emotionally exhausted now, because modern life turned identity into performance, attention into value, and being ordinary into something people are secretly afraid of becoming. But maybe human beings were never meant to live under this much comparison all the time. Most people don't feel important anymore. Not truly. And maybe the strangest part is, many of them don't even realize when that feeling started. It happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, one comparison at a time, one scroll at a time, one late night staring at other people's lives through a screen. Modern life made ordinary people feel invisible. Every day, millions of people wake up and immediately compare themselves to strangers online. More successful people, more attractive people, more talented people, people traveling more, achieving more, living lives that somehow feel larger. And after enough time, the human brain quietly starts believing something dangerous. That being ordinary means being worthless. For most of human history, people compared themselves to a small number of people around them. Friends, neighbors, family. But now, the modern brain compares itself to millions of lives constantly. Every scroll becomes comparison. Someone richer, someone happier, someone more productive, someone more admired. And even when people know social media is filtered, part of the brain still reacts emotionally to what it sees. That's why so many people feel strangely dissatisfied now, even when life is technically okay. Because modern life constantly shows people versions of success they feel unable to reach. Perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect apartments, perfect relationships, perfect lifestyles. And eventually, ordinary life starts feeling emotionally small by comparison. That's why many people no longer enjoy simple moments the way they once did. The brain becomes too focused on how life appears from the outside, how successful it looks, how impressive it looks, how valuable it looks to strangers. Even happiness itself sometimes starts feeling performative. People go to restaurants and think about pictures before experiences. Travel becomes content, moments become posts, memories become something to display. And slowly, people stop experiencing life completely for themselves. Part of the mind stays outside the moment constantly, observing, comparing, evaluating, wondering whether life looks meaningful enough. That's exhausting for the human brain, because attention was never meant to stay focused on external validation all the time. But modern life rewards visibility constantly. Attention became currency. Followers became status. Virality became importance. And maybe that's why so many people secretly feel emotionally replaceable now. Because the internet exposes people to endless talent endlessly. No matter what someone achieves, the brain immediately finds someone more successful, more admired, more intelligent, more extraordinary. And after enough exposure, ordinary human existence itself starts feeling insufficient. That's why so many people feel pressure to constantly improve themselves now, to optimize everything: appearance, productivity, personality, lifestyle. Even rest sometimes feels guilty now, because modern culture keeps telling people they should always become more successful, more interesting, more exceptional. And maybe that's the real reason so many people feel emotionally tired today. Not because they failed, but because modern life quietly convinced them that simply being human is no longer enough. And once the brain starts believing that, ordinary life begins feeling invisible. Silence begins feeling uncomfortable. And simply existing no longer feels valuable anymore. Social media didn't just change communication, it changed identity itself. For the first time in human history, people became exposed to millions of lives every single day. Not real lives, curated lives, edited lives, highlighted lives. The best moments of millions of strangers presented constantly through glowing screens. And the human brain was never designed for that kind of comparison, because comparison used to be limited naturally. People once lived inside small communities, small circles, small social environments. But modern life removed those limits completely. Now the brain compares itself globally. Every day, every hour, every scroll, and eventually, people stop seeing themselves normally anymore. A normal apartment starts feeling unimpressive. A normal salary feels small. A normal life feels like failure. Not because life became worse, but because expectations became distorted. That's why so many people feel behind in life now, even in their 20s, even in their 30s. The internet constantly creates the illusion that everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, living better, becoming more successful somehow. And the dangerous part is the brain emotionally reacts to repetition. If people constantly consume unrealistic lifestyles, ordinary reality slowly starts feeling emotionally disappointing. That's why social media often creates dissatisfaction without people noticing it directly. The feeling builds slowly, quietly, like background emotional pressure. People begin questioning themselves more, comparing themselves more, feeling inadequate more, and eventually, their sense of self worth becomes connected to visibility. Likes, attention, validation, recognition. Modern identity became external. People start measuring value through reactions from strangers. And once that happens, silence becomes uncomfortable because silence provides no validation, no feedback, no proof of importance. That's why many people feel anxious when disconnected from the internet for too long. Not because they truly need information constantly, but because the modern brain became emotionally dependent on stimulation and recognition. Even boredom feels different now. The brain immediately wants attention again. Something new, something validating, something distracting. And maybe that's why modern loneliness feels so strange. People are connected to more humans than ever before, yet many feel emotionally unseen anyway, because visibility is not the same thing as connection. Attention is not the same thing as meaning. And constantly being observed online does not automatically make people feel valued internally. Sometimes it does the opposite. It makes ordinary human life feel invisible by comparison. One of the most painful feelings modern life created is the feeling of being replaceable. Like no matter who you are, someone better already exists somewhere. Someone more talented, more attractive, more intelligent, more successful. And because the internet exposes people to endless competition constantly, the brain never fully escapes comparison anymore. That changes the way people see themselves psychologically. For most of history, human value is local. People mattered to specific communities, families, friends, neighborhoods, small groups of humans who truly knew them personally. But modern life shifted value toward visibility. Now people often feel valuable only when they are noticed, recognized, validated, seen. And if attention disappears, many people quietly begin questioning their worth. That's exhausting emotionally because attention is unstable. The internet moves too fast for permanence. One moment someone is admired, the next moment they are forgotten completely. And over time, people internalize that instability. They begin feeling temporary too, replaceable too. That's why so many people constantly pressure themselves to improve now, to stay relevant, to stay interesting, to stay impressive enough. Because modern culture quietly teaches people something dangerous, that being unnoticed means being unimportant. And the brain absorbs that message more deeply than most people realize, especially young people. People grow up watching millions of strangers receive attention constantly. Fame becomes normalized. Virality becomes aspirational. Extraordinary success becomes expected somehow. And ordinary life begins feeling emotionally invisible by comparison. That's why many people secretly feel like they're falling behind, even when life is stable. The internet constantly creates the illusion that everyone else is becoming extraordinary faster. And maybe that's why people feel emotionally exhausted by self improvement now. Because it never ends. There's always another goal, another comparison, another version of success to chase. The modern brain rarely feels complete anymore because modern culture rarely allows people to feel enough. Enough money, enough beauty, enough success, enough productivity, enough importance. And eventually, people stop appreciating their own existence naturally. They begin viewing themselves the same way social media does, as something that must constantly perform to deserve attention. But human beings were never meant to live under endless observation like this. The nervous system was designed for connection, not permanent comparison. And maybe that's why so many people feel emotionally disconnected from themselves now. Because modern life trained them to constantly evaluate their worth, instead of simply experiencing life while being human. Maybe that's the real tragedy of modern life. People no longer know how to feel enough. Enough without proving something. Enough without attention. Enough without constantly improving themselves. The modern world keeps pushing the same message endlessly. Become more. Achieve more. Earn more. Optimize more. And after enough time, people stop treating self-improvement like a tool. It becomes survival. Rest starts feeling guilty. Doing nothing feels unproductive. Even peaceful moments become interrupted by pressure. Thoughts about the future. Thoughts about success. Thoughts about whether life is moving fast enough. That's why so many people struggle to enjoy the present moment now. Part of the brain is always calculating something, comparing something, worrying about something. The nervous system rarely feels emotionally safe enough to simply relax. Because modern life keeps creating invisible urgency constantly. And the exhausting part is, most of that pressure never truly ends. There's always another milestone, another goal, another version of success people feel they should reach. That's why achievement often feels strangely temporary now. People accomplish something, feel relief for a moment, then immediately begin chasing the next thing. The brain barely pauses long enough to feel fulfilled. And maybe that's why so many people secretly feel emotionally disconnected from their own lives. Because they spend more time trying to optimize life than actually experiencing it. Even happiness sometimes becomes performance. People feel pressure to document moments instead of living them, to appear happy instead of feeling peaceful, to look successful instead of feeling emotionally stable. And eventually, the line between real fulfillment and external validation becomes blurry. That's dangerous for the human mind, because external validation never fully satisfies emotional needs for very long. Attention fades, trends disappear, people move on quickly, and if self-worth depends entirely on recognition, the brain remains emotionally unstable constantly, always searching for reassurance again. More attention, more proof, more validation. But maybe human beings were never supposed to constantly prove their worth to the entire world. Maybe ordinary existence was always enough. Maybe quiet lives still have meaning. Maybe people were never meant to turn their entire identity into performance. And maybe that's why so many people feel emotionally exhausted now. Because modern life convinced them they must constantly become more, without ever teaching them how to feel enough already. Maybe human beings were never meant to be observed this much, never meant to compare themselves to millions of people every single day, never meant to constantly question whether their lives look meaningful enough from the outside. But modern life made comparison endless, and eventually, the mind begins forgetting something important, that a human life does not need to be extraordinary to have value. Not every life was meant to become famous. Not every moment was meant to become content. Not every person was meant to live under constant attention. And maybe that's why so many people feel emotionally disconnected now, because modern culture keeps teaching people to look outward constantly, toward validation, toward recognition, toward comparison, while slowly pulling attention away from ordinary human experience itself. Quiet mornings, conversations, rain outside the window, walking through the city at night, moments that once felt enough on their own. Now, many people experience those moments while mentally comparing themselves to something else, someone else, another life somewhere online. And over time, ordinary existence starts feeling emotionally invisible. But maybe the problem was never ordinary life itself. Maybe the problem is that modern life made people forget how meaningful ordinary moments can actually be. Because attention became obsessed with extremes. Extreme success, extreme beauty, extreme productivity, extreme visibility. And the human mind quietly became exhausted trying to keep up with all of it. Maybe that's why so many people feel tired now. Not because they failed, but because they spent too long trying to become enough for a world that never stops demanding more. And maybe real peace begins the moment people stop measuring their worth through constant comparison. The moment they stop needing attention to feel valuable. The moment ordinary existence becomes enough again. Because maybe being human was never supposed to feel like competition all the time. Maybe it was supposed to feel lived instead. Maybe the internet changed something deeper than attention. Maybe it changed the way people experience life itself. Because modern life no longer feels completely private. Part of the brain is always imagining how life appears from the outside. How moments look. How experiences look. How identity looks to other people. And eventually, people stop living naturally. They begin performing subconsciously. That's why so many moments feel strangely artificial now. People visit places and immediately think about pictures. They hear music while imagining videos. They experience sunsets through phone screens. Even emotions sometimes feel observed. Like part of the brain is standing outside the experience instead of fully inside it. That changes human behavior more than people realize. Because the nervous system was never designed to constantly monitor how life appears to strangers. But modern platforms reward visibility endlessly. Attention became social currency. And over time, people began shaping their personalities around what receives validation. What gets attention? What feels impressive online? That's why authenticity feels rare now. Many people no longer know who they are without observation, without reactions, without external feedback. And maybe that's why being alone feels uncomfortable for so many people now. Because silence removes performance. There is no audience in silence. No validation, no proof, just the self without distraction. And for a modern brain conditioned by constant visibility, that can feel strangely unfamiliar. Maybe that's why so many people feel pressure to constantly improve their lives publicly, to appear productive, to appear successful, to appear happy enough. Even exhaustion sometimes becomes performance online. People turn burnout into identity, sadness into aesthetics, loneliness into content, and eventually, the line between genuine emotion and performance becomes blurry. That's dangerous emotionally, because human beings need spaces where they are not performing constantly. Spaces where existence does not need to be optimized or displayed. But modern life keeps collapsing the distance between private life and public identity. And after enough time, people begin feeling emotionally disconnected from themselves because part of the mind never fully relaxes anymore. It keeps observing, evaluating, presenting, performing. And maybe that's why so many people secretly feel exhausted even during moments that should feel meaningful. Because the modern world taught people how to be visible constantly, but slowly made it harder to simply exist naturally while nobody is watching.